Thanks so much for joining us, Frankie. We really appreciate it. We know you're busy. You're out in the field today, so thanks for taking time to hop on with us today.
I'm grateful to be here. Thank you so much.
Absolutely, absolutely. Let's jump into our first questions. You often say behavior is the brand. Can you share a moment when changing kind of a single behavior completely shifted someone's brand or maybe your own?
Absolutely. Yes. So, first off, I'm in the middle of this, I call it a series. People don't realize that's what it is quite yet. But I've started this written series on LinkedIn talking about how behavior is brand, and I'm really breaking down brand and branding, process that brings us to a place of what brand is. Still have a lot to come, but the general idea that I've at least released to this point is that first off, behavior is a form of communication. If you're watching the way a person behaves, they're trying to communicate something to you. A person's behavior repeated and reinforced over time is what becomes what we consider a brand. It's the thing that we can trust, what we can believe, what we can always count on from that person. There are times where we may step outside of our behavior for different reasons, but a majority of times it's going to be consistent with that brand that we have created over time. Now, I could give you several examples of myself because I like to say that I've lived about 1,000 lives to this point, been able to travel across a lot of different industries before landing here in behavioral psychology and communications. But one that's probably a lot easier and people might enjoy listening to more is Taylor Swift. It's one I like to bring up. Believe it or not, so Taylor Swift, she used to be known for, I don't want to say boy crazy, but somebody that always sang about her relationships, breakup songs. Oh man, rough times, for young
We all
Taylor Swift.
remember early 2000s, I think.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. But there came a time where she decided she was going to change that narrative altogether. In fact, one of the big moments was when she redid a lot of her original songs. She decided to own more of herself and her brand. So she went from being boy crazy and too sensitive to being a storyteller and being lyrically and behaviorally more of a storyteller in her music. So it wasn't just communicated that she was a woman standing up for the things that women stand up for, but she was now one that took ownership for her actions. She was a woman of resilience and one, of course, that was loyal to her fans. And that spoke, I mean, that actually paid off in dividends. So her reclamation of her own brand in order to redo it, if you will, has now earned her a position of having cultural resilience in the perspective of her fans and the way they see her. And that's paid off in dividends.
Absolutely. I really like that term, the reclamation of her brand. I think that's a cool way to say it, and I think it's there's very very few of us that would have the courage to take on our own brand and take a practical look at it and then actually
So
make change. It's not an
there's
easy
so
thing,
much
I'm sure.
importance to that, though. I haven't been able to write about it yet. It's something that's coming, but she had to reclaim it because for a good part of life, our brands don't belong to us. That's something we can talk about now later, or you can see it when I write about it. But yeah, man, that's a big part of why I use it.
That's awesome. That's awesome. And so you blend science, CPT, ABA, psychology, all of that with branding. What's one kind of surprising insight from psychology that you think every founder should know and understand about building their brand?
I recently wrote the PMAC principle. I don't know if anybody has seen this yet. Let's just say from behavioral psychology, there's this principle. It's called the PMAC principle. And essentially, you can reinforce a less preferred behavior with access to a more preferred behavior. In simple terms, I like to say behavior doesn't just go away, but it has to be replaced with something of equal or greater value to you and to the people that it's serving. And that's something that is important for us to understand not just about the people that, let's say, we hire, but even about ourselves. That, along with our strength and neuroplasticity, there's always an opportunity to change things. But the way we go about it is what makes all the difference.
It's more the journey than the destination, kind of.
100%, man. Everything there's nuance to everything because people are dynamic. We're not
Absolutely.
static, and so that has to be kept in mind if you want to have real success with people. Yeah.
Makes complete sense. Makes complete sense. So, how do you go about finding and gaining new clients for yourself, and what is working best for you right now?
Word of mouth still works the best, but being very intentional. I've learned to be more and more intentional over my lifetime with pretty much everything possible. And when it comes to clients, it's not that you have to really master saying no to clients. It's you have to master saying no to yourself of thinking you need to access everything in order to maintain success. In fact, figuring out not just what you're the best at, but what you're going to be the best at evolving in is what gives you more long-term success. That's what I've learned. And so, what I mean by that, I'm in the middle of reading this book right now. I love it so far. It's about building models and social behavior models. And one of the things that it talks about is not being limited by your skill, but only being limited by the questions that you have. What that means is that your skills can keep you in a box of what you do versus questioning what can come from this, what can I do, what more can I learn. Living in a place of optimism and possibility helps to give you an extension on opportunity. So I've done that, and in doing that, I have not been limited to the type of clients that I've worked with over time. So I've been able to work with municipalities, I've been able to work with ISDs, been able to work with small brands, very large brands, everything under the new sun. I spoke to a church a couple of weeks ago about behavior modification. I started out working with children with autism and in special needs. So, if you keep yourself open to things like that, that's what's worked for me and has given me a lot of opportunity with different clients.
That makes complete sense. You have to stay flexible as a person, as an organization, as a professional, all of those places.
100%.
So what have you found is the hardest part of growing your practice, your organization?
So I am definitely a firm believer in you can be your biggest opponent, your biggest obstacle. However, also believe the words of Marcus Aurelius that said the obstacle is the way. And so, if you learn to embrace those obstacles, then it again keeps you in a mindset that is of what can happen, what is possible. I think shared issue that I have dealt with in business, and I say shared because everybody goes through this, is of course learning how to maintain finances for the future as opposed to just for the moment, because that requires an extreme amount of discipline, discipline that you don't have to have. And so we are not always able to refine ourselves. And so working in behavioral psychology has helped me to accept that although there are systems and models that should be put in place to help us, to help reinforce those behaviors, surrounding yourself with and being in groups and organizations and around people that do it better than you also help. And so those have been also the things that have helped me embrace those obstacles like finances so that we can be prepared for what we want to do in the future versus just thriving in the present.
Absolutely, absolutely. So as a marketing CEO director, I'm always thinking about marketing and advertising. What is one marketing tactic that you're either considering right now or just watching really carefully in the marketplace?
I don't know, I don't want to say new trend, but there is this constantly evolving trend in communications that I've noticed. It's called community-driven storytelling. I don't know if you've heard the term, but you probably, it's almost self-explanatory thinking of it, but instead of just pushing a message, communities now are creating spaces for customers, businesses that are within those communities, creating spaces for their employees and the communities to share their stories that will reinforce their brand. That's been important because it doesn't just bring together the business community or the community within the business, but it makes that business a part of the community outside of itself. I want to find a more succinct way of saying this, but with community-driven strategies, it helps to create, oh, that's it, a collective identity, this collective social identity. And so it's fascinating to watch these things work together. How now, where a brand has thrived off the individuality of their strengths, now it's shifting into finding a way for that business, that brand to integrate into the community's overall brand and identity. And that actually creates more strength, more of a stronger foundation that helps them to thrive for longer and extend the reach of what they can do.
Absolutely. And it's also then not so dependent on the business to always be driving a storyline, coming up with new things, coming up with new topics, coming up with new advertising slogans.
It, it creates a built-in trust, which is not necessarily new. When we used to see back in the 60s, 70s, maybe even prior to then, family businesses in the neighborhood and how people would get behind them, it's kind of back around that idea of returning to the village concept, but for
Mm,
businesses. Yeah.
absolutely. So I almost always find that people have a specific reason for working in behavioral health. Would you mind telling us kind of why you got into this field?
So I would say I got into behavioral health by Providence. I was trying to find a CBT program at the time. And as I was looking at and interviewing different schools, I fell on the Chicago School of Professional Psychology, where Dr. Michael May, who was over the behavioral science department at the time, said, "You should check this out." I talked to him for almost an hour. What could have been a 15-minute conversation. And in that time, he fully convinced me. I enrolled that semester. I didn't stop until I finished the program, thanks to him and thanks to all of the spectacular staff there. From there, however, my life was changed by the things that I learned because although behavioral sciences have been built around the theory of determinism, it also has given you this freeing power to understand how you can control or how you can better control the way you behave, act, or think when you understand the environments that you're in, when you understand the things that you're dealing with. And so I wanted to share that with the rest of the world. I've been used to doing that for years because before I was in psychology, I was on radio for almost 25 years. I retired 2 years ago this July. And so I was always, and many other things prior to that, I've always wanted to share the great things that I've learned to help change people's lives. And so ABA has helped me to do that.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Perfect. Well, thank you so much, Frankie. We really appreciate you joining us. We appreciate you sharing some of your wisdom and experience, and we appreciate you taking time out of your day.
100%. Thank you so much. Again, I appreciate being on here. Thank you for the invitation. It's really an honor. And continued success to you, brother, in everything that you're doing. Seriously.
I appreciate it. Thanks so much.